I don't know if you can see on the camera, but the all the heather on the moorland up here has turned this bright purple. It's beautiful. Maybe not something you notice when you're staring at somebody's back wheel on a group ride.
I'm so tired of the same old lines we rehearse and rhyme but don't believe. Ain't it time that we speak our minds and just realize we're meant to be? Say you want to and we'll leave tonight. Say the word, it's up to you. But I think we both know how these things go. Just say you want to.
Good morning folks, hope you're doing really well. Welcome back to another little video, and if you're new to the channel, just welcome, and hope you stick around and enjoy some of these rides. Yeah, I thought as we go around today I'm going to I suppose go through a few tips and tricks related to solo riding. You'll probably know from watching my channel that I do ride with others, and I've done a few club rides in my time, but probably fair to say the majority of my rides are solo. That's kind of the kind of cycling that I really enjoy. But you kind of forget, I think, over the years that can be a really daunting prospect for some people. And if you're thinking about getting into cycling and for whatever reason, you know, might be your other half just doesn't fancy it, might be the area that you live in, it's difficult to meet up with other cyclists, you know, whatever the reason, if you're a bit nervous about going solo, so to speak, well, I hope some of these tips might come in handy and, you know, might help you prepare to really enjoy getting out for a solo ride. It doesn't have to be scary, and you know, in my experience certainly it can be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, let's get off this windy top. Man, it's the wind speed's about 12-13 miles an hour, but gusts of up to 30, and yeah, it's not ideal for filming, so we'll lose a bit of height, and I'll get into the first of my top 5 tips for solo riding. Whew. If you know the area, we're just heading to Craggy's farm shop, and then going to make our way across to Selby, I think. I just wanted to see what the wind was like before I kind of finalise my plan for a bit of a route today. I don't think we'll go back on the tops. The headwind would be pretty bad, so we'll probably go just down the Calder Valley or up the Calder Valley, depending on your persuasion, on the towpath, and maybe just stop off around Hebden and grab a cup of coffee, because we can. We're on a solo ride. We can set our own pace. We can set our own agenda. So anyway, there. Tip number 1. These are in no particular order, but I think I'll get the sort of serious one out of the way first, and that's in case of emergency. So God forbid the worst happens and, you know, somebody comes to your assistance and needs to get in touch with, you know, somebody at home or your kind of emergency contact. Do have those details with you, so that would be my first tip. The obvious place to put that is on your phone. So I have in my contacts, my emergency contact, I just have in brackets ICE next to their name. So if anyone gets into my phone, they can identify who my emergency contact is, and they can ring them just to say something's happened but Martin's okay, or he's been taken to this place to get checked out, etc. If you put a little dash next to that name, it will move to the top of your contacts, so again more easily identifiable. And if you Google emergency information Android phone or Apple phone, you can actually put some details that can be accessed through the lock screen, and it's debatable as to how sort of useful that is, but I don't think it hurts at all to put those details in. So yeah, tip number one is just make sure you have, you know, worst case scenario, some emergency contact details with you. Alright, that's the serious bit out of the way. Let's get on to tip number two. Here's where we are. Great views across to Studley Pike here. And I've not seen a single car on this road. Oh, it's just great.
I'm not sure what tomorrow holds, but we'll never know unless we try. So take my hand, baby, don't let go, and with a little hope we'll be alright.
Okay, so tip number two for solo riding for me is, it's quite an obvious one, I guess, that you don't have anyone with you to rely on if you have any kind of mechanical. So my tip number two really is to make sure you carry enough tools and spares for, you know, get any kind of basic repairs that you might typically encounter out on the road. And you know, the most common one obviously is a flat tire, so I'd say as a minimum carry a bike pump and one or two spare inner tubes, maybe a patch kit. And just a little caveat to that, I would, just before you go out, or just generally, I would at home just practice taking the tyres on and off the wheel on your bike. You can sometimes find you don't want to have, you know, the weather turning and a flat tyre, and actually find even with decent tyre levers you can't get the bloody tyres off your bike because they're these crazy tight, you know, they have a reputation for being notoriously difficult to get off the wheel. So just kind of make sure you can do that before maybe you go on a solo ride, and just as a minimum take a pump and like a spare inner tube and maybe a you know, a multi-tool. And slightly related to that, I think there's things you can do to kind of minimize your chances of really coming unstuck with a mechanical or a breakdown, and that's sort of related to tip number three, coming up in just a second. Oh man, this little road is so nice, but windy. Brilliant views there down towards Halifax, and you might have to trust me that it's there because it'll be very small on the camera, but just on the horizon behind me I can see the mighty Emley Moor just over that way. You won't see that, will you? And then we've just got Calderdale now snaking off around to the left. My hunger slightly got the better of me, so I'm cutting a couple of miles off the ride I kind of had in mind, and yeah, I'm hankering for a coffee and a bite to eat actually. But yeah, tip number three, I guess related to that, is about choosing a route that's appropriate to a solo ride, and particularly if you're kind of new to this and nervous about, you know, doing your first or doing an early solo ride. Just a car coming here. Oh, how to get going with clipless pedals and film at the same time. Yeah, I think the route choice is important, and you know, start modestly, choose a small route, maybe a route that you know well from, you know, walking or just because you know the area. Perhaps don't do what I did today if you're unsure or nervous about mechanicals, you know, which is choose a route that's really remote and you're not going to see any other passing pedestrians or cyclists. If you are worried about mechanicals, maybe choose somewhere where you're going to run into other people. You know, people generally will stop and help you out, I find. Particularly as a cyclist, I think you sometimes come across as quite vulnerable in the right way though, where people want to kind of give you assistance and offer help. So yeah, tip number 3 I think for solo riding is kind of get the right route for maximising your ability to really just enjoy the ride rather than worry about where you are or the fact that it's remote or the fact that you might break down, etc. I've come back into the wind suddenly. Wow. They're not bothered, obviously.
Say you want to and we'll leave tonight. Say the word, it's up to you. But I think we both know how these things go. Just say you want to.
You can probably see by these videos that I make that I spend quite a bit of time faffing around with the camera and doing little ride paths and all that sort of jazz. So my average speed on this ride is just 10 miles an hour. It's very, very leisurely in terms of pace. Just stop here. But that brings me on to my tip number 4 for solo riding, and it's very, very different to, you know, riding with another person, where if you're kind of flagging a little bit for energy, you can just tuck in behind them, take advantage of that slipstream and get out of the wind or the headwind and really just kind of catch your breath, take a breather. I've been zipping along in kind of big group rides sometimes, doing 20 miles an hour. I'm not even pedaling, and the guys and girls at the front are really working hard to kind of keep the, it's not peloton, but you know, keep the group moving at a decent pace. But it's very, very different when you're you know, when you're out on a solo ride. So my 4th tip would be just set yourself a really leisurely pace and make sure that all the way around you're feeling, you know, as far as possible, depending on the, you know, the distance that you're cycling, you're kind of feeling strong. You feel like you've still got stuff in the legs and you've got enough kind of energy and reserves, I guess, to kind of get you home. And kind of keep, as a solo rider, you know, keep the right side of that red line. And we all learn from bitter experience. You know, I've redlined sometimes miles and miles and miles away from home, and I've spent the last hour, a couple of hours of a ride just sort of limping home, completely done in, completely exhausted. You know, no amount of food or drink does anything. So yeah, just make sure you're keeping your pace, I guess, appropriate to solo riding, and not trying to ride the way you would if you were, you know, out in a pair or with a group, where you can kind of take those breathers but still be moving quickly. Right, let's crack on.
Say you want to and we'll leave tonight. Say the word, it's up to you. But I think we both know how these things go. Just say you want to.
So my 5th and final tip for solo riding is probably a little bit left field, but it might be just personal to me, but I do find sometimes it takes a while for me to kind of get into the ride. And I also find sometimes if I'm riding a fair distance, or if I've got some like steep climbs or something on the ride, I can get a little bit psyched out really, and it can be quite a daunting prospect. So I really think it's good to find something to just kind of distract you a little bit from the ride. And I don't mean distract you in terms of being unsafe, you know, not thinking about where you are on the bike. But it might be, you know, some people like to have those open ear headphones and just listen to music or podcasts. I actually quite like just sort of picking a thing to think about on my ride. It could be anything from, you know, an event I've got on. That sounds fancy, doesn't it? An event I've got on, you know, just something I've got to organise, or it might be some work emails I've got to write when I get back for, you know, slightly tricky customers or projects or whatever. Just something to kind of initially distract you and kind of get you into the ride. And what I actually find is at some point during a ride, and this happens to me every single time, I just find that I've zoned out and I'm focusing on just the sound of the tyres on the road or the trail or just my breathing, and I've just got into that lovely sort of headspace that you get, I think, when you're cycling, and you get all the benefits, I think, from being out and being on your bike. But yeah, my tip number 5, slightly left field, is kind of have a couple of distractions in your back pocket, just kind of something to take your mind off the ride initially if it's a bit of a daunting prospect, and a way of kind of getting into and kind of easing into the ride. And I think then as the ride unfolds and as you get further into the little trip or the tour that you're taking, I think you just get into that cycling mindset that so many of us enjoy so much when we're out on our bikes. So folks, there you have it. They're my top 5 tips for solo riding, and I've left so many things out. I've not talked about, you know, cycling kit, clothing. I've not talked about personal safety. I've not talked about money. I've not talked about fueling or nutrition or anything like that. Loads of other things you could mention, I think. And I'd be really interested to hear from you if you're an experienced solo cyclist. You know, what kind of tips would you give somebody who's a bit nervous about, a bit kind of wary about going out on a solo ride? Please do, you know, drop your thoughts down in the comments. I'd be really interested to kind of hear what your tips might be. But yeah, I should say thank you so much for watching. If you followed along to this far in the video, I really do appreciate it. Please do consider liking and subscribing, and leave me a comment on the video. It really helps me out, and it's helping me to get this little YouTube thing off the ground. And yeah, just remain stay safe out there, take care, and happy cycling. I'll see you out on the next ride. No idea what it's going to be. Might be solo though, so yeah, bye for now.